again the primary passage that we read this morning, Hebrews chapter 1, verse 1. Long ago, God spoke to our ancestors by the prophets at different times and in different ways. In these last days, He has spoken to us by His Son. God has appointed Him heir of all things and made the universe through Him. We were introducing the subject of walking with the prophets with the subtitle Towards Divine Communication. Okay? And we learned that the main reason why prophets need to be raised is because of the fall. God could no longer speak directly to man. One of the reasons why God can't do that is because the Spirit died. It's got separated from the Lord because of the fall. The Lord is a Spirit, and so when He communicates, He can communicate to all of our being, but His primary vehicle of communication is our spirit. The devil speaks to our minds. God speaks to our spirits. And when God speaks to our spirits, of course, it goes to our minds. And the devil speaks to our minds, and we can entertain it in our spirits. So the the battleground becomes the mind. And man began to fall. At the beginning, God was able to talk to them because the first tendency of sin is to hide. You wonder why people who are sinning, they don't want to be caught. That is the first tendency of sin, to hide. That's the reaction of Adam and Eve. They hid. And so, sin is not openly done. Even the defiant ones wants to do it in secret. And because of that, God could no longer speak to man. But the Lord had always wanted to speak to us because we were created in His image for His pleasure. And so how can we be pleasing to God if He cannot even talk to us? And so in God's desire to keep the communication going, in spite of the different personalities, the Lord start using prophets. The word prophet simply means one who speaks on behalf of another. That's why even Aaron was a prophet by virtue of speaking for Moses. Moses speaks for God. And so the prophets begin to be raised, and the Lord will look at a pool of people who is willing and obedient. These are the primary qualifications: willingness and obedience. And sometimes we wonder, why will God raise some of these people in spite of their questionable character? Well, to begin with, it's not like that. But the Lord is patient because He doesn't want anybody to perish, but that all should come to repentance. And so He is really looking for people whom He can use. But do not misinterpret that as God's approval of their person. I mean, the Lord has to use Balaam somehow, and for the life of me, I don't know what he did, But that is the unsearchable depths of God's mercy. And He wants us to understand that. And so, we cannot overlook that, and we begin to say, well, just listen to my message. Ignore how I live. Well, your life shouts out loud that they cannot hear our words. That is the problem. That's why we ended this morning saying that the prophet must have an integration of his life and his message. A prophet's life is part of his message. And so in the scriptures, God speaks to the life of a prophet, positive or negative. Now, if a prophet backslides, or if a servant of God turns away from the Lord, his life is still a prophecy, and the message is, this is what happened to somebody whom God has blessed and turned away from God. And so I take notice of, some of the best people that God has raised. John Alexander Dowie, William Branham. But somebody flattered them and begin to say, "You are Elijah the prophet," the reincarnation of Elijah, something like that. And their ear loved it. And so the flattery got in. They begin to worship these people. And so it caused their fall. You see? That's why I've been warning everybody, avoid flattery. You know, somebody sings well, clap your hand and say, "Praise God." But don't tell that person, "I have never seen a singer sing like you. You're the best in the world." Well, have you heard everybody? You know. But we want to go on their good side, and so we flatter them. Flattery can be very disruptive and destructive to a life of a person. You know. By the way, sometimes we flatter our kids. We tell them they are the prettiest thing or the handsomest thing there is that ever existed on earth. And so they begin to think highly of themselves. And pride always comes before the fall. You know, so these are some of the things that we have to be aware of. And then when a person is started hearing from God, wow, what a phenomena. And so people begin to say how mature they are. I was a victim of that when I was newly born again. I caused the disruption of our Bible study in the university because I was teaching, and one of my partners began to flatter me, and I was newly born again. It got into my ego, and our leader, I began to just ignore him, you know, and it split our Bible study. It broke my heart when I saw the effect of that. This guy flattered me. He said, I was teaching something, and he said, and somebody got born again. By the way, that person who got born again is a pastor now. And he said, "You know, if I'm not born again and I heard you teach that way, I will be born again." Whoa, my ears clapped because I thought I was very good. But that flattery is very destructive. And so, you need to be very wary of people who flatters you. More than anything else, they're the devil's voice, intending to put pride in your life. And by the way, do not feed your pride also. You will disqualify as a prophet or as a spokesperson of God. And by the way, you have to be very careful. This Facebook thing, you know, the Bible says in the last days, many will be lovers of themselves. You know, we post the best of our pictures, the best sides. We have to be careful because you may end up desiring so much to have a lot of likes that you are now catering to the whims of those who are following you. And then they will flatter you. You have to be very careful. That flattery is very disruptive. And God, I'm not part of that garbage. You know, I've told people I don't even appreciate it even with my kids, when people post my pictures without my permission. Yeah. At one time, some of my friends in the Philippines, we gathered and then they took a picture with me, and then I never realized the quickness of these people. They're taking pictures in 2 seconds. It's on the web. And somebody got hold of it, and I was told by somebody, "Hey, Pastor, I didn't know you're friends with this person." I said, "Who is that person? What do you mean by that?" Well, it turned out one of them is an adulterer, and I'm in the picture. And they said, we don't allow him to preach in our town. He's such an adulterous person. And he posed with me on a picture with some of my friends. Now, of course, who knows what happened there? But they will take advantage of you. And so get a good dose of who you are, you know. You may be pretty, but you are not the prettiest. And somebody will be born who's prettier than you. You may be handsome, but somebody is more handsome than you. And somebody will be born who is more handsome than you, okay? You may think you're smart. Somebody is always smarter. And somebody will be born who will be smarter than you. That's just the way it is. The moment you begin to think that way, you will have a good dose of who you are, and hopefully it makes you live on planet Earth. So God will reveal Himself not only in your message, but also in your life. Your life is very much part of the message. Now, this is the other thing, because we're identifying a prophet right now. Prophets pay a great price for the message they carry. Okay? Now, if the word of the Lord will come to you, there is, in the words of the prophet, it is as sweet as honey in his mouth. And when it came down to his belly, it was bitter. Okay, you can interpret that a lot of ways. Its application in your life is a bitter song. But also, some people call it, you will see in the scriptures, the burden of the prophet so and so. There is such a thing when you hear a message from the Lord. There is such a thing as a prophetic burden. Okay? Now, some people think when they receive a message from God, everything is glorious. Well, it is. It's the glory of God. But there is a certain weight that comes along with it. Now, there are some examples. I told you your life is also part of the message. There are some examples in the Bible that I'm yet to probe the depths of its lessons. Okay? For example, let's talk about Hosea. Hosea is one of the hardest life message for me to interpret. I mean, this guy is married to an adulteress who thinks she is Miss Universe, that everybody should have sex with her. Can you imagine? This woman is so immoral. She was forgiven by Hosea on the word of the Lord, and she keeps going back to adultery. And then when nobody would pay for her sex already, she was so addicted to sex that she began to pay men to sleep with her. Yeah. Until she became so cheap, sin will cheapen you. She became so cheap, nobody would even buy her in the slave market. And you can assume she was very beautiful to begin with, but sin will make you ugly. And the word of the Lord came to Hosea, and he was told, forgive your woman and take her back again. I'm telling you, that is a burden. What is the lesson of that? Because your life and your message is part of the prophetic message. Hosea knew the faithfulness of his wife in multiple occasions. This made him understand the heart of God on how God feels towards the unfaithfulness of Israel. Israel is like a harlot who would pay her lovers to have sex with her. And I don't imagine when God told Hosea, forgive her and marry her, she was happy speaking in tongues and praising the Lord. I'm trying to put my feet in his shoes. Why? Now, this is not, thank God I'm not Hosea, I'm Hosea, but can you imagine to be given that command by the Lord? That woman whom you loved as a young virgin, she walked away from you, slept with men, you forgave her. She walked away from you and slept with men and sold herself to prostitution, and then begin to pay men to sleep with her. That woman that is so abominable, a social disgrace. I want you to forgive her, and I want you to take her back. Thank God there were no emotions described in the scriptures on how Hosea felt. How would you feel if that's the case? You know, my fiance wrote to me when she was in the Philippines. She said, "Is it okay for me to go on dating with other men?" That's my wife, because her friends are evil. And when you have evil friends, they will invite you to do evil things. They want her to be unfaithful. And so they told her that I already perhaps have girlfriends in the U.S. And so she wrote me and said, "Can I date?" I said, "Sure you can. I'll kill you." It's in my letter. I said, "I'll kill you." I said, "By the way, Anne, I don't need to be there to kill you." Can you imagine how stupid that letter was? You are asking your boyfriend if you can date. Who is a foolish man to agree with that? You're not only foolish, you are below foolish. You know, that is when you wish you live in the Old Testament and stone that person to death. But this man was told, marry her. You think it's within the will of Hosea, but that's part of the message. That is a prophetic burden. You know, thank God, not everybody was given that command. Only Hosea was given that command. No, you know how I was telling you that everybody wants to copy everybody. When Kim Clement started prophesying in his music, everybody wants to prophesy the same way. I've known a pastor that has no hair, and he was trying to brush his imaginary hair because Kim Clement will do that to his hair. Why don't you copy Hosea? If you're going to copy somebody, and why don't you copy Hosea? I bet they won't do that. What about when one of the prophets was told, lay on one side of your body, and then somebody Ezekiel was told to prepare food, right? From his own, you know. Why don't you copy that? They only want to copy the brushing of the hair, you know, and the music. You see, this is people are moving in the flesh. But this is part of the message. If you want to understand how God is loving to us, think and forgiving. How can you probe the depths of that kind of love? This woman went into whoredom. And God told him, forgive him. Because that's how I forgive. And the Lord used the word, the harlot Israel. Yeah. You see? Thank God there's only one message like that. And there's only one prophet raised to be like that. Otherwise, people will not want to be a prophet after that, you know. Ezekiel. Now, this man loves his wife. His wife died. Now, what will you do if your wife dies and you love her? You will mourn. And what did God tell him? No. Do not mourn. Can you imagine this? Do not mourn. Because it's a message concerning what's going to happen to Israel. Do not mourn for that. I want it to happen so that they will learn their lesson. Do not mourn for that. And here you are a real person, you love your wife, and God told you, do not mourn for your wife. That's part of the message. You see, remember, it happened already before to one individual in the Old Testament. Who was that? Aaron. His two evil sons died. And as a father, you would want to mourn. And God says, hey, no, you may die too. Because you are supposed to serve the Lord with gladness. You're supposed to enter His gates with thanksgiving and offer that kind of sacrifice. Thank God these are unique individuals that God used to send this kind of message. That's why a lot of the prophetic messages are done once, not repeated. Because God is trying to make... Can you imagine this prophet by the name of Peter? He was also an apostle. Ananias lied to him and Sapphira. What happened? You lie, you die. That is a strong message that God gave to the church. I don't take lying lightly. And yet we interpret lying today as, oh, white lie, little white. No. That is how God deals with lying. And by the way, that's lying about the offering. That's why, if you're not tither, be honest. You're not tither, but don't claim to be a tither if you're not. That's the equivalent of that. And if you're giving your tithes, don't you ever dare say that's your offering. That is your tithe. That is not an offering. Don't lie to God about that. Because God takes it seriously. But that is a prophetic message right there. That is a... Wow, don't go to Peter for counseling now. Why? You may die. And so some of these prophets you will find, they were avoided by people. Because sometimes there is a certain sense of sternness that you feel around them. Because they have the burden of the message of the Lord. And so if you want to be a spokesperson for God, a lot of the spokespersons for God right now have backslidden. They determine their message now by what YouTube and Facebook approves. These are no longer true servants. I'm telling that to you now without apology. These are hirelings. These are people who doesn't carry the burden of the message of the Lord already in their lives. And so, as I said this morning when I ended the message, God is raising new leaders right now. And we can only pray that we be included by the Lord. Jeremiah. This guy was one of the youngest man called. Before I formed you, I knew you and have anointed you to be a prophet of the nations. That's how early he was called. And yet God told him, I'm sending you to preach to a stiff-necked people, and they will not listen to you. To be sent like that. And yet you have to go. Have you been sent to relay a message to somebody and you know they are hard-headed and your boss or somebody says, just go. I want you to share the message. This is what God told Jeremiah. And so he was rejected by his own people in his own time. And Jeremiah was an object of assassination attempts. Yeah. I believe it's the Spirit of the Lord who gives courage to people like Jeremiah to carry on the message. Some people are very cowardly. When God gives you a message, sometimes you will go back to your own closet and you will wonder, why in the world did I say that? But it's the burden, and you already said that. And it's the burden of the message that you have to live with. The message of these men that came from the Lord, let me use this term, they were very expensive. They were very expensive beyond human capacity to bear. You need the grace of God to carry this message. Yeah. That's why if you're going to be a preacher and all you want is for people to smile at you and to approve you and to have likes in your website, it disqualifies. How about preaching that homosexuality is an abomination from the Lord? Abortion is murder. A lot of preachers shy away from this already. They cannot carry the burden. You cannot carry that burden too unless it is by the grace of God. What about if you are a parent? And you have to share to your family the word of the Lord. That is a burden. That is a burden. Son, if you don't shape up by the word of the Lord, get out of this house. Because that's the word of the Lord. You know. Now that's a burden. It's not an easy thing. You know. Son, you are such an immoral person. By the word of the Lord, I should drag you outside of this house, cast the stone first, and let the community follow. That's discipline from the Lord. That's a heavy burden. So a lot of parents have lost their prophetic voice. They cannot relay the message of the Lord anymore. That is a prophetic burden. You know, and you have to understand that under normal circumstances, nobody will be able to bear that. The Spirit of the Lord has to carry you along. And by the way, that's how you judge human personality sometimes, and their prophetic personality. I have known servants of the Lord that with all honesty and tears submitted to discipline without question. Yeah, in regards to their own family. And my admiration just goes so high, because a lot of so-called servants of the Lord will hide and cover for their family members who are committing evil. This is a prophetic burden, you know. Now, do you think my ate told me this? She said, let's show our love for our brother. Even if he's dying, let's pay for everything. I said, no. I said, he was told to stop drugs, it'll kill him. This is beyond repair. And she is retiring. And she said, I'll get the lump sum of my money to show him I love him. I said, you already showed him you love him. I said, retirement is when you can no longer work. I said, he is, I told my sister, he is going to die. Do not include yourself in the death. How about when you look at your brother and you saw death, and I have to look at him and say, is your relationship with God okay? Now you better tell the truth to mother, because of the following things. It broke his heart. And my wife told me, are you really going to tell him? You've got to speak up. You know, I told him, I can't allow my mother to take care of a grandchild that is not hers. She's old. She doesn't deserve that. Why will she take care of a grandchild that doesn't belong to her? I said that, you know. But the Lord has to strengthen your heart. The Lord has to strengthen your spirit and have the stomach for these things. Because God wants to communicate to people. But He will not flatter you. If He sees you dancing with the devil, He will tell you you are dancing with the devil and you're about to go to hell. False prophet will say, it's okay. God is gracious. Once saved, always saved. You can commit adultery with Satan and you will still go to heaven. Yeah. That's a message from the pit of hell. And I don't care what title a man carries. That is not from God. And if you are not willing to carry that message, that burden, you disqualify. Now, there's a big difference between the prophetic word of wisdom and the prophetic message of encouragement, exhortation, and comfort. The second one is easy. You can easily judge that. But when the Lord gives you words, you know, my wife told me, why did you speak like that to your brother? I said, didn't you see death in his face? We step out of the hospital. I said, he's already dead. I said, I want to make sure his relationship with God is right. And when you see that, you act accordingly, you know, and you make sure that he goes to heaven. But if you will be a coward and not declare the word of the Lord, you will lose a lot, you know. So, and these are what the Bible describes as the prophetic burden. Jeremiah became very unpopular. You also cannot stereotype. Listen to this. By the way, this is still part of the introduction. Introduction this morning, more introduction tonight, okay? But you cannot stereotype a prophetic ministry. You know, we have this habit of looking at somebody and we want to copy them. Yeah. Young and old are the same. We are not happy with who we are, and so we try, whatever is popular in ministry, we try to copy. If preachers are jumping up and down, we want to jump up and down, you know. In the 40s, 50s, and 60s, if you are a preacher, what is popular was you'll be wearing a suit like this, and then you will be preaching with all your might, spending all energy, so you will be sweating. And then you will take off your jacket and everybody will see your sweat. That was, wow, he's really anointed because you smell, you know. He is really anointed. You wonder how some of these people, when they lay hands, they all fall down. Well, you stink, you know. So they just fall down. But that was the fun. I've seen times wherein a person will be laying here and will look fiercely into your eyes and scare you. And people are doing that. I have seen this as a young man. And the Lord had given me a spirit wherein I begin to see these things and I will question this. Why are they doing this? You know, at first they will intimidate you, and at times they annoy me. There are some preachers who just flatly annoy me when they preach because they are trying to copy somebody else. You cannot stereotype anybody. You know. By the way, this goes on even on personal relationship. I don't like you. We'll break up. Why? My former boyfriend kisses better than you. Why will you do that? But try to read several articles and you will find these are the complaints in some. You don't kiss like my ex-girlfriend. What in the world is this? You are stereotyping personalities. And we are doing the same thing in terms of ministry, and we don't want people to be what they need to be. Who is this? Who is that? David Wilkerson, Cross and the Switchblade. His grandfather was a phenomenal preacher. He has a great preaching grandfather. His dad is a phenomenal teacher. Both were good. And so David Wilkerson said, Lord, what am I? You know, what am I going to do? I can't be like my grandpa. I can't be like my father. Who am I? And God told him, I want you to go to the gangland of New York, and I want you to love on them. And that's the story of Nicky Cruz. You know? And he loved on them and caused revival in New York, and one of the finest churches existed because of him. And he was known to be a prophet of his time. This guy will mince no words in terms of the message of the Lord. But he was saying, I can't be like my grandfather. I can't be like my father. What am I, Lord? You see? And because he opened himself to that, the Lord was able to relay message through his life. You cannot stereotype anybody's ministry because prophets are very diverse. In Hebrews 1, God spoke in sundry times in different ways. You cannot really stereotype them. Elijah had many signs and wonders. I mean, Elijah is a type of prophet that doesn't need introduction. Some preachers, they want to be introduced lengthily, you know, and they will preach for 30 minutes, they'll be introduced for 15 minutes. They love that kind of garbage. Elijah doesn't need introduction. He just pops up. I mean, this guy just, here goes Elijah. And every time he appears, people get nervous. What's happening now? Is there going to be no rain? Is going to be fire? Is going to be death? Remember those people? Man of God, if I'm man of God, let fire fall from heaven. And boom, everybody died. You know? And so the second group came, man of God, if I am, die. Everybody died. A third group was sent by the king. He said, please. I know what happened. I like to paraphrase. I've got kids. You know, I've got a wife. Please, we're just sent here. We don't want this. Because the temper of Elijah, you know. Say, why is he like that? Well, you are being seen one aspect of God's personality. You see? One aspect of God's personality, you have Hosea. But you look on the other aspect, he'll consume you because he's a consuming fire. You know? And you have to be very careful. What is the face of God that is looking at you? Because He will be looking at you like Elijah, and you are waving your hand, boom, and fire came down. And that's just a prophetic message. Isaiah, look at this. John the Baptist is the greatest of the prophets. 0 miracles. 0. Did you ever hear the Baptist complain to God about that? But his burden. And this guy was looking at the leaders of his days and told Herod, what you did was wrong. You took your brother's wife. Wow. Can you imagine being sent by God like that? What you did was wrong. You're cheating on your brother's wife. Oh, we want to be easy now. Oh, it's okay. Once saved, always saved. God is gracious. Oh, but the Baptist. And then he was sent to jail. The price he paid, his head was served on a silver platter. That's what it is. Did he complain? How could he? He's dead. Could not talk. The vocal cords were literally cut, Isaiah prophesied in the king's court. And by the way, he was a statesman prophet. In Hebrews 11, they were sawn asunder. Some believe that the way they killed Isaiah was they cut him in two. Sawn asunder meaning they use saw. That's why you're sawn asunder. Can you imagine? Have you ever seen somebody get killed being sawn? Anybody here seen somebody like that? I have. I'm not joking. I've seen all kinds of things. I've seen a dog slaughtered by a man using a handsaw. They tied this dog, and he was drunk, and he grabbed the head, and he started sawing. I was looking at that, and the dog was whimpering, and this guy just keeps sawing. Some people have no soul. Yeah. Now, that is a dog, and when I saw that, I was a little boy. I said, wow, what is this? A drunkard just sawing the head of a dog. And the dog was tied up. He cannot do anything, just holding up. That was, if it's not a dog, I would say it's demonic, But, and after he did that, he cooked the dog. How can you do that? You see? They did it to Isaiah. Well, they did not cook him, but they did it to Isaiah. Sawn asunder. That's the price he paid. You see? And he did not draw back. Yeah. Ezekiel was sent to the captives in Babylon. By the way, Jeremiah was a prophet to the nations, but he stayed home. Yeah, he stayed home. He was given a choice, remember, when the king came. Hey, what do you want to do? You want to go to Babylon? You want to stay home? He said, I'm staying home, So he stayed home. But he prophesied to the nation. He also counseled the people. Look at this. He counseled the people to submit to Babylon and walk away from the land. By the way, when he said that, a lot of false prophets came up and say, no, God will break the yoke of Babylon. And in 2 years, he will be totally destroyed. That was a false prophecy. And but the burden of Jeremiah is, there are so many false prophets saying opposite. He was the lone voice. By the way, when God calls you to speak His message, sometimes you will feel very lonely. You will feel you are the only voice. But that's part of the prophetic burden. Yeah. Jonah was sent to a foreign city of Nineveh, and he hates it. Yeah. Now that's one of those things. God can do that, and he decided to take the ship. That harbor is still there. I don't know if I brought you guys there in our trip, but it's still there in Israel right now. And he doesn't like the Ninevites to be saved. And so he was complaining. But there you see, against the wishes of his servant, God still expressed love to a people. Sometimes you will say, well, if you don't do this, I will not preach to you. That's not very divine. God says, you think I care? I want the message sent. Well, there was a storm in the middle of the ocean, in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea, and the word of the Lord is on him. The sailors were asking, what shall we do to be saved? Look at what the prophet says. Throw me in the waters. In the middle of a storm, will you tell the fellow sailors, throw me in the water? And then when they throw him in the water, instead of water, he saw this big mouth of a fish about to catch him, Yummy. That's the real sushi right there, But he never died, and he was there for 3 days and 3 nights. I don't know how he found out it's day and night when it's in the middle of the belly. But these prophets sometimes are weird, How did the fish open his mouth and he saw daylight? Oh, it's day one, Close again, nighttime. Majority of David's prophetic ministry was expressed through songs. That's an amazing thing. That's like Kim Clement, his prophetic mess. That's why, well, Kim Clement is not singing, but actually David sang his prophecies. This guy is a man of war, and yet he expressed his prophecies through songs. How many people do you know like that? Well, Merla Watson, among those who might know to be like that. Daniel articulated his prophetic message through writing. Moses commanded the people to destroy their enemies and take the promised land. That's Moses. Kill the enemies. Take it by force. That's Moses. You see? And it's part of the message. So what we see is the uniqueness of each prophet and their distinct contribution to the outworking of God's purpose on earth. And so here it is. You and I, we are all unique individuals. Don't, when Paul said, follow me as I follow Christ, it means be disciples. But you don't have to preach like me. You don't have to stay single like me. You don't have to be me. Just follow my example of following Christ. But our personalities are all different. Yeah. Be happy with who you are. The problem is when you begin to try other people's personality. You just hope I'm not around because I'll speak up, I don't know if you guys remember one of my seminars in Bulacan. Every day they have a different worship leader. And during the time, Darlene Sheck was very popular. And this young man, I don't know what happened to his brain. He was moving like Darlene Sheck. The way he led worship was like Darlene Sheck. Even the way he moved, I don't know how she moved her hand, but she was moving his hand so much like this. It annoyed me. I said to the preacher, what is that? And they said, well, that's Darlene Sheck. He's copying Darlene Sheck. Mo, that's all the cue I need. When I stood up, I said, I don't understand you guys. You have men like this worship leader here, acting like a woman. I never saw his face again. Never showed up in the service again. Do you think I care? I don't. I don't like to see a man acting like a woman. But a lot of preachers are scared to say that. I'm not. Yeah. Most of you perhaps are sent by the Lord to comfort the afflicted. I'm sent to afflict the comfortable, Yeah, it's the other way around. Now, while each prophet is unique, they also have much in common. They are called to come into the presence of God and receive the word of the Lord or God's burden to his people, no matter what personalities. For us to receive the message, we have to come into his presence. You cannot be God's spokesperson if you don't like to commune with Him. Yeah. If you don't like to pray, if you don't like to read the Bible, if you don't like to fellowship with the people of God when He is speaking, you cannot be that way. There is one thing that is common. For you to get the message, you have to engage God in His presence. Their primary concern also is the person and words of God. This is the concern of the prophet. They want to introduce God. They want to relay God's message. We can say right now, the New Testament prophets, their concern is to relay the message of Jesus and to introduce who Jesus is. A real prophet in our days is so burdened to have the ability to introduce Jesus to this generation. Yeah. You know, it should be part of your burden to ask the Lord, give me the ability to introduce Jesus. That should be your prayer. Give me the ability to introduce Jesus in any way, shape, or form. Then you can become a prophet of Jesus. You see? Because now you are surrendering your life and your words and your message to speak for Jesus Christ. But right now, God speaks through Jesus. These prophets also get grieved and stirred up when they see the people of God get satisfied without the manifest presence of the Lord. You know how when people practice the religion, they are happy. Oh, we've got a wonderful church today. How so? You see that little boy, that little girl, he gave or she gave a special number. It was amazing. That's what you got. You know what Jesus said about little kids? He didn't say, look at this little kid. He's so cute. We need more of them like this. No, he said, unless you become like one of these little children. By the way, after the children will reject it. Unless you become like one of these little children, they are very real. You cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. Kingdom of heaven does not belong to you. Because a child, if they are hungry, they'll tell you they're hungry. A child, if they're annoyed with you, they'll tell you. If you give them gifts that they don't like, they'll throw it away. Yeah. As adults, we are hypocrites, Somebody gives you a gift that you don't like. Thank you. I love it. I'm going to use it every day. And you turn around and say, what in the world did he give me, But a child, I don't like it. They'll tell it in your face. And that's what God said. Unless you have that kind of attitude of being transparent to me and open to me, you cannot enjoy the kingdom of heaven, you see. Which gives us a very good lesson that as we mature, we become like that museum. We become plasticized. Have you seen that? What museum is that? The human body? Total. What? Body Works. There you go. Body Works. They plasticize everything. They cut them like salami, and they plasticize everything. Yeah. This is what God is looking for people. The message is God is looking for people who are real. And you look at David, Lord, unless you save, I'm going to die. By the way, Lord, if I die, the dead doesn't praise you. That's how David talked to God. God enjoys it. God enjoys it. So they are grieved. A real spokesperson of God will never say, well, I've got a good sized church. Let's not stir the nest, okay? Let's not stir the nest. We've got good attendance. We have a lot of people. We're collecting a lot of offering. This is what big churches do. Let's not stir the nest. Everything is cool, Everything is good. No, a servant of God, a prophet of God will not be happy with that. Doesn't matter how many their offerings are. The prophet of God in Isaiah chapter 1 will say, your hands are full of blood. They're bringing in gifts to the Lord. And the prophet says, your hands are full of blood. They're full of sin. I will not accept it. You see? A false prophet will say, Your hands are, full of offering. Come in, come in. Feel comfortable. Give more. Oh, Pastor, I'm living in adultery. It's okay. Just increase the offering. But a true servant of God say, I will not receive that. God will never accept that. You see? That's a servant of the Lord. And I'm concerned that the church has become comfortable today because those who are supposed to be speaking God's message are just happy that they have a good building, that they have good attendance, they have good offering. They're just happy with that. They don't want to stir the nest. But a truth, remember this, from our last lesson in Hebrews, the word of the Lord shakes everything that can be shaken. Shakes everything. And so, whenever, and remember, none of us here is perfect. And so whenever the word of the Lord comes, something will be stirred in us. Because we're not perfect. There's something that needs to be corrected. So when you begin to say, well, enough with that, I don't want to hear that. Well, you don't want to hear the word of the Lord. But if you are not perfect, the word of the Lord will shake you up. Because that's the nature of the message. It unsettles you if you are being comfortable with sin. Oh, some people are so comfortable with their sin. Some people are so comfortable with evil, with lying. That's not good, and they need to listen to the word of the Lord. A servant of God will not settle for anything less than the presence of God. They'll always cry out, Lord, I want your presence. I want your presence. I want to be soaked in your presence. I want to know you more. These are beautiful prayers that we have turned into song. Now, to illustrate this, let me mention a prophet here. Amos. Who is Amos, DJ? Amos confronted the religious system of his days. Let me give you an example. Amos 5:21. I despise your feasts. I can't stand the stench of your solemn assemblies. By the way, when you read prophets like this, don't be religious. I despise no, don't read like that. Read it like God means it, This is Amos. I despise your feasts. I can't stand the stench of your solemn assemblies. Even if you offer me your burnt offerings and grain offerings, I will not accept them. I will have no regard for your fellowship offerings or fattened cattle. Take away from me the noise of your songs. I will not listen to the music of your harps, but let justice flow like water and righteousness like the unfailing stream. You see that? Sometimes we try to hide the evil of our days. Let's have some plays. Let's have some special numbers. You know what God says? I hate those songs. This is what God says. The solemn assembly, when you blow the trumpets, when you have those concert music, I hate them. I will not accept them. Why? Because he said, there is unrighteousness and there is injustice in the land. By the way, when it says unrighteousness and injustice, the just word of the Lord is not being implemented. So it means the word of the Lord is not being taken seriously as a law. And this is what Amos did. This is what this prophet did. What this means is this. The message of Amos says, stop playing games and begin to bear fruit for God. In today's time, stop playing church. Yeah. Are you going to church today? We'll see. I don't feel good this morning. Stop playing church. A lot of people play church. Yeah. Some of you come to the church with disfigured faces. I don't know what's wrong with you. Yeah. Did the world collapse on you? And you're standing before the Lord. The Bible says, come into His presence with thanksgiving, with praise in your heart, and you walk in. You're like a zombie. Yeah, and you think you look handsome or something. God doesn't like that. Because God says, I want you to come into my presence with thanksgiving and praise. There goes the message, But this is what's happening. Like, a lot of people are just playing church. It's 11 o'clock. And they are in the parking lot. The offering has been taken. It's time to go inside. No, they come inside. Do you think for a second that God is pleased with this? The devil is pleased with that, but not God. You see? They have made a religious activity out of a most sought fellowship that God is looking. Yeah. And so Amos said, you think I like your fellowship offerings? You think I like your feasts? You're not living my word. Why do you think will I like that? You see? And so people today talk about prophets and apostles, and this is the burden of somebody who carries the message of the word of the Lord. Now, sometimes there are funny stuff, and you can find that in the Bible. It makes you laugh. But there's not a lot of them. God wants you to be fruitful. Now, only a deep hunger for the manifest presence of God can bring true fruitfulness. You've got to seek Him. You have to say, I want to be fruitful. I want my life to matter. John 15, verse 5. I am the vine, you are the branches. The one who remains in me and I in him produces much fruit, because you can do nothing without me. Yeah. And how many people today are still trying to do something without God? Yeah, they just do things without God. Don't do that. Jesus already said, you cannot do anything without me. Now, having said all of that, let's talk about the necessity of the prophetic voice. Why is it necessary? Especially in our days. 1 Samuel chapter 3, verse 1. Let's go back to that passage. I told you the background this morning. The boy Samuel served the Lord in Eli's presence. I want you to notice that. He served the Lord in Eli's presence. He doesn't know what he was doing, so he was under supervision of somebody who knows supposedly what he was doing. Now, the second part of that passage is sad. In those days, the word of the Lord was rare, and prophetic visions were not widespread. You know that prophetic visions was not widespread because the word of the Lord keeps coming and the people of God keeps living unrighteous lives. You keep doing that, the Lord will back off and say, that's what you want, that's what you got. And so there are almost nobody who is willing to receive the burden of the Lord. Like, for example, I can tell who are those who are not speaking for God when they preach. You know, when the Laughing Revival took place, there was one preacher who said something that never left my mind. He did not question the laughter. He said this. In the kind of world that we are living right now, he said, why will we be laughing when we should be weeping? I forgot to say that, but it stuck on my head. And I never even saw the preacher. I was just listening to his tape. I said, wow, what a deep statement was that. He said, why are we laughing when we should be weeping? Because you look at the abortion, you look right now at the LGBTQ plus or minus, you look at the corruption around us. Why will you be laughing? There is a time for laughter and there's a time for mourning. This is a time of mourning. Look at what's happening in Ukraine. And these political personalities who are just very good in lying and making speeches are not doing anything. And what you're seeing, retired soldiers, doctors, lawyers, are hanging on their uniforms and saying, we're going to go, we are going to fight for Ukraine. I know what is right and wrong in 100% terms, but they are touched. And some people has the gall right now, we are being warned already, they're trying to make money off of this. Because if you form a foundation for this cause, all you got to do is to spend 5% of what you raise, and you can keep 95%. That's how evil man can be, you see. And so when I heard that word, we should be weeping, why are we laughing? I said, wow, what an accurate statement. But here, the word of the Lord is rare because nobody wants to receive the burden. And for example, if you say to me right now, if you say to the Lord right now, Lord, send me. What do you think is the message that God will put in your lips to deliver to our generation? Do you think God will tell you, tell everybody you will become millionaires? Tell everybody that you will have no sickness and disease. You think that is God, the message of God? No. He's going to tell you, repent. Because you have fallen into the abyss of sin. And your conscience has been seared like hot iron, and you don't even feel. That will be the message. Nobody wants to take that burden. They want to look pretty. They want to look handsome. And so who is speaking the message of the Lord? Very few. Yeah. The world today, specifically the church world, has reached the same level of backsliding, if not more, as the passage in 1 Samuel 3 verse 1. The voice of the Lord has become rare. I mean, every year I will hear prophecies. You will prosper. You'll be healthy. And the people of God keeps getting poor and dying of sickness. And sooner or later you get a question, what is going on? No, those are messages of the Lord, but messages should be delivered in time. If you are sick, your doctor should be telling you, hey, what's your diet? What's your sleeping habits? Watch how you exercise and all of those things. If you're sick and dying, say because of cigarette smoking, the doctor will not tell you, hey, you're taking 2 packs of cigarette a day, make it 4, okay? The doctor will not tell you that. The doctor will tell you quit. Now, you may not like it because of nicotine addiction, but the doctor will tell you, you want to survive, you want to live, don't do that. Preachers should be telling that to the church today. You want to survive, stop the adultery. Stop the thievery. Stop the cheating. Stop the immorality. Stop the lying. Stop these things. None of these things are pleasing to the Lord. But nobody wants to say that. They want to look cute. They want the tithes and they want the offering. You see? And so the burden of the message of the Lord, it's needing. Now I'm not saying you be mean because there's a message of mercy, but you've got to deliver it accurately and appropriately without fear. Many voices they're all actually to totally silence God's word. Oh, don't, Bible is, you can't use the Bible for counseling. That's what they're saying now. When your children are asking what is their sexuality, don't use the Bible to say they are male or female. Don't. They are trying to stop the word of the Lord. They are trying to censor the Bible even in this country. Things that only happens in Russia and in China. I told you the story about one of my classmates at Regent. She was a teacher of English as second language. And there were refugees coming from Russia. Because you have to remember the Berlin Wall collapsed, right? So there were refugees coming from Russia. And so my classmate said, and she was sharing this in her class, she said, I felt so ashamed because here's this this woman in my class, English as second language, and she was so distraught. And she told me, would you please pray for me, because there were new arrivals of refugees from Russia. And I told my husband, because they got separated, we will meet each other in Virginia Beach, or in America or something like that. But they have friends in Virginia Beach. They say, we will somehow meet in Virginia Beach. That will be our meeting point. He said, a new set of arrivals came. My family is not there. And she said, please, pray for me. I want to know if they are alive. Pray for me. And my classmate, who is an MDiv student, studying to be a minister, okay? What a shame. She said, I will pray for you after the class. And the Russian Christian said, what? I'll pray for you after the class. I said, why? I'm not allowed, it's illegal to pray in the class right now. This class is sponsored by the U.S. government. I cannot use God or religion. I cannot pray for you here. After the class, I'll pray for you. And she said, this is the same as Russia. Yeah. This is the same as Russia. Because she became a coward. She should have laid hands on the thing and prayed for the comfort of her soul. Oh, I will listen to the government first. And she said, this is just like Russia. What an embarrassing commentary from a refugee coming from Russia. This America, this is just like Russia. You know? It's because we have become cowards in terms of speaking the word of the Lord. Just look at the debates on areas of morality. Today, they are forbidding people from using the Bible to support their arguments. You cannot use the Bible. You cannot use the Bible. Well, I think a couple of my kids told me that in their school. You cannot be using the Bible a lot. Oh, remember that? Yes. You cannot use Bible as a non-fiction novel. What is that? You are forbidding these young students from reading the Bible. What do you want them to read? Books on adultery? Books on sex and self-destruction? This is what is being fed in our society. Look, you want the Lord to use you, you have to be willing to carry His burden. The prophetic burden that even if you feel alone, you will speak the word of the Lord. That is what God needs. The backsliding of the priestly family in 1 Samuel shows the need for a genuine prophetic voice. Because the priestly family were the ones who were supposed to be spokespersons or people of God. They are supposed to guide others and be guided by the word of the Lord. But they backslid. The backsliding is not only from the sons of Eli. It started with Eli, okay? Eli to his children, children to Eli. I don't know where it started, but somebody got converted by somebody. But I know this as a father who had raised 5 kids. All of my kids were totally dependent, 100% dependent on my guidance growing up. All of them. Yeah. They want to hear their father tell them the right thing. Yeah. All my kids, no exception. And so when parents say, my kids are not listening to me, you train them not to listen to you. I train my kids to listen to my voice. Yeah. Because the command is not on them, it's on us. Raise up your kids in the fear and knowledge of God. Stop blaming your kids. You raised them up that way. Yeah. You've got to come to your senses, repent, and ask the Lord for mercy. And hope you can salvage something. But in the early days in this church, I have members who will even come to me and say, Don't you think you are mean to your wife? Really? Pastor said, don't you think you are mean to your children? Really? You want my children to be like your children? What are you, crazy? I'm just following the scriptures. You think I will let my wife to give me her skirts? It's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. It's not going to work. I told her that. That's not going to work. And some of you complain about your wives or complain about your husbands. You are partners in that crime. The word of the Lord is clear. All you've got to do is to follow. And so, the backsliding started from the family of Eli, from Eli himself. And you have to confront that. We are always, every generation of Christianity is the same thing as what Ronald Reagan described. Remember Ronald was giving a speech, he said, democracy is just one generation. We're just one generation away from losing it. Christianity is the same. It's just one generation away. Now, I told the Lord, God, I'll do what you want. When I started having kids, I told God, I'm not going to lose Christianity on my kids. I told the Lord, I want a lot of kids, but I said, I'm not going to lose. I told the Lord, when we were starting a family, I said, I'll do what you want. I'll put my hand in your mercy and your grace. I'll discipline, I'll teach, I'll chastise, I'll correct. I told the Lord, even if the government disagree with me, I'll do your word. And I did. You know. But you need to have the courage to do that, because that's the burden of the Lord. God says, I want godly children. That's what He's demanding from parents like us. Hey, I want godly children. You have to deliver godly children before the Lord. Are you listening? That's why you should not be playing favorites. That's my child. Don't play favorites. Devil is devil. Don't play with him. Okay? 1 Samuel chapter 2, starting on verse 12. Eli's sons were wicked men. Can you imagine if you're a clergy family and the first description of your family is your children were evil men? This is how and Samuel wrote that, and he loves Eli. And he said, Eli's sons were wicked men. They did not respect the Lord or the priest's share of the sacrifice from the people. When anyone offered a sacrifice, the priest's servant would come with a 3-pronged meat fork while the meat was boiling, and plunge it into the container, kettle, cauldron, or cooking pot. Every cookware that has food. That means they look at, maybe there are stages of cooking. I don't know, I don't cook, so maybe at a certain stage they put it in this cauldron, at a certain stage it goes to this pot. I mean, these guys are so evil, they look at every pot. From the beginning stage, the middle stage, before it's sacrificed. Because you remember, these burnt offerings, this is a divine barbecue, you know. After the pot is burned, everybody eats. And you know, if you prepare barbecue, which I don't, you marinate it, you boil it, and then I'm just talking out of information, you know. I heard that's what they do at Max Chicken, so I'm just assuming. The priest would claim for himself whatever the meat fork brought up. You know, something came up, it's mine, you know. This is the way they treated all the Israelites who came there to Shiloh. Even before the fat was burned, the priest's servant would come and say to the one who was sacrificing, give the priest some meat to roast, because he won't accept boiled meat from you, only raw. If that person said to him, the fat must be burned first, then you can take whatever you want for yourself, the servant would reply, no, I insist that you hand it over right now. If you don't, I'll take it by force. So the servant's sin was very severe in the presence of the Lord, because the men treated the Lord's offering with contempt. They want God's share. You see? There are some things that is not yours. It's God's. Like, like the tithes. Don't put your fork there. It's not yours. I want it! And the people are saying, look, burn this first because the fat belongs to the Lord. Burn this first. Then you can have your share. You can have your barbecue. You can have your full. No! Give it to me now! And the Bible says they were very violent. They'll beat you up. They'll beat you up in the temple. Here, they're building a good church here now in Devon. But the main church here in Ashland before. The pastor was preaching the word of the Lord, and one of the fat lady, a rich lady, pastor, and he's one of the richest members there. Pastor, don't be preaching that anymore. Beware of people who wag their finger on you. Sometimes I have people do that to me. I want to break the finger, Wagging, Pastor, don't preach that anymore. It's offensive to me. And I was told that lady just gave $20,000 in offering. They were having some building project. I gave you the money. Don't be preaching that. I'm warning you, Pastor. This is a member of the church warning her pastor. I'm warning you. Don't do that. It's not your place. Well, the pastor wants to be righteous and he preached the word of the Lord. Now, I was told this. I didn't see it. Thank God I didn't see it. The pastor was leaving the church and he was going to his car, and this fat lady who was rich came to him and said, I told you not to preach that way, and he beat him up in the parking lot. And the other members were watching, and they did not do anything. The pastor stood up, brushed himself up, and said, I'm sorry. Sorry. Yeah, that's true story. My friend Ovidio, they didn't like much what he was preaching in Phoenix. He was about to preach. It's a Christmas Eve celebration. He got to his prayer closet, and he was about to go and he told me this. He went about to go to the platform. He was in the foyer, and this man met him and said, I told you, don't preach like that, and beat him up in the foyer of the church. Yeah. And he bled, wiped himself, and went and preached. I asked, what happens next? He apologized to the guy. I said, did you do something wrong? He said, no. I said, why did you do that? I said, why did you do that? Don't you have any ushers? He said, they saw it, but they didn't do anything. Yeah. That's how defiant members can be, simply because they can give $1. So I keep asking the Lord, prosper me, Lord. I don't want anybody to buy me. Yeah, I want to be prosperous so I can preach the message freely without restraint. This happens in churches. And the priests in the Old Testament were subject to that. Say, what is this? This is the burden of the message. You want to be a spokesman for God, these things can happen. And believe me, you will not be able to do it in your own strength. You will not. You need the grace of God. I told you this so many times. When my wife was very upset with me, she threatens to leave me. That little lady there, she threatened to leave me. I said, I'm going to go to New York to my aunt, her aunt who serves the devil. I'm going to go there. And I told her, let's sit down. I said, it will offend people that I pastor. I don't want any of them to backslide on account of me. I said, let's do this right. I said, first, take a vacation for 2 weeks in New York. And the people will be asking this Sunday, where are you? And I'll tell them, you went to New York for a vacation. And they will ask me how long. I said, 2 weeks. And then you will not return because you don't like me anymore. I said, she likes New York. She extended for another 2 weeks. And you will be there for 1 month. After 1 month, I'm going to tell the people, I'm going to pick up my wife. And the moment I'm in New York, I'm going to call the church and say, my wife likes it in New York. Find yourself a new pastor. And they wouldn't know what happened. I said, let's try to not offend the people of God. It shocked her. But you think she will manipulate me into that? No way. I love Jesus more than I love anybody else. I love Jesus more than I love my wife. More than I love my children. That's how I love Jesus. Jesus is my Lord. I get the message from Jesus, not from my wife, not from my kids. I get it from Jesus. And I'll tell you this, when you preach like this, and it's not always like this in all congregations, it's where God puts you. America is different. I'm telling you, Christians here who doesn't even read their Bible in the Philippines, they come here and present themselves as pastors. I've seen that. The amount of lies that took place simply because Americans are ignorant. They're not even deacons in the Philippines, and they come here and they present themselves as pastors. I've heard of people forcing others to ordain them because they give money. This is what's happening in America. Yeah. Now, I cannot be part of that. That's why I believe the Lord raised me in the way He raised me because of the kind of ministry that He gave me. I really afflict the comfortable, you know. But that is part of the burden that I have. The Lord did not give me any leeway on that. If I tell you some of the passages God gave me along the ministry, I keep wondering, why in the Lord are you giving me this passage? I told you the first passage is Psalm 118, 8 to 9. Do not put your trust in man, put it in God. Don't put your trust in princes. I was asking the Lord, my friends, when you called them, you gave me this passage. Why did you give me this passage? I would prefer other passages, but God gave me that passage. I didn't realize what type of struggles I'll have starting in the Philippines. Starting in the Philippines. But the message of the Lord is very real. Now, we are living in the United States. Our government is no longer friendly to churches. Our schools are very anti-Christian. If you think you're going to be soft on your kids and they will have the personality to fight back in faith, you are wrong. The world is mean. They will rape our girls, they will abuse our boys, and they will smile doing it. Therefore, we need to put strength in their bones. We need to put character in their person. We need to tell them, you've got to fight the fight of faith. You know? But if you don't love the word of the Lord, you will not endure that. You see? But this is what God wants. He really wants to communicate to us. And He wants to guide us every step of the way, but we have to learn how to submit to His word and be obedient to His word. He wants to relay His message of love to the world. But if that love is adulterated, if that love is tarnished, people won't even know the difference. You see? We have to be the pillar and support of truth. And if you're willing and obedient and you say that, you will enjoy an amazing grace from the Lord. He will give you a lift. The miracles that will happen in your life, it will make you shake your head and say, where did that come from? You know, and it's the Lord. He's strengthening you. I'm telling you that now because I'm 60 years old. When I started in this church, I was very weak. No papers, very little money. And at that time, people started trying to push me around. I refused to be pushed around ever since. And sometimes I went on the road and prayed, I said, why do I have this personality? And God gave me a passage on that one. I won't tell you what that passage is. I said, Lord, I should be begging these people so I will stay. But God doesn't give me that personality. That's not my message. When we were still very weak, people started pushing me around, trying to put me every which way. And my personality that the Lord gave me just refused to follow. Yeah. I remember when we bought that house, we have a member before. He was beating up on his wife, and I took his wife in our house. And I said, I'm going to go to your husband. And he said, oh, Pastor, say don't. He told me, if I told you, he will beat you up. And I look at her and said, do I look like you? He said, what do you mean? I said, do I look like you? I said, what do you mean? I said, if he tries to punch me, I'm not like you. I'm not going to catch it. I'm going to give it back to him. What kind of pastor talks like that? But that's me. And so I went to his house, knocked on the door, knowing that he can punch me. And when he saw me, he says, Pastor, say, welcome. Yeah, but you cannot allow people to intimidate you like that. Because you say, why are you like this? This is the ministry that God gave me right now. I'm not always like this. I wasn't always, but in this time. Because otherwise you will not be able to administer your stewardship. You know. Now I'm telling you, don't copy that personality. You have a different personality. Some of you are so sweet, I need you in my team. So there will be some sweetness around me, you know. But if you think I'm going to massage you, think again. I'm going to break your back, you know. This is, because what I have seen in my spirit is perhaps different than what the Lord is showing you. But all the same, we are part of the same body. And what I know is, what the Lord's instruction to me is, you will teach my people my word. And that's what I have set out my heart to do, regardless. Okay? Now, God needs prophets. God is raising a new breed of leaders right now who will not be intimidated, who will be, if their personality is sweet, they will be sweet, but they will deliver the word of the Lord. By the way, you move into this, that's where the fun is. You will see things that you thought you will never see. You will hear things in your spirit that nobody else will hear. And you will have an assurance that you are in the will of God that nobody can give you. Yeah. And that is very satisfying. Amen? The end. 1 minute. I give you 1 minute. Okay, let's all stand.